but I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart but captured.
Sure, I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course, they do everything with an agenda.
Yeah, she came into it. It seems really wanting to paint me as someone that has been co-opted by the right wing.
Yeah,
and I don't know how much research she had done into me. She claimed to have read my book twice.
So your argument, and I've read your book twice because I want to.
Everyone saw it. Everyone felt it, and nobody expected it to hit this hard. The week Sunny Hostin studio armor cracked, and two very different wrecking balls, Charlie Kirk's spreadsheets and Joe Rogan's sarcasm, took turns denting the glow. You clicked because you heard there was an apology hanging in the air, you heard a lawsuit was floated, and you heard a TV host who lectures America from a swivel chair finally met a reality check she couldn't out-talk. That's the headline. That's the moment. And yes, it actually happened. The show faced enough heat over a smear of 5,000 high school and college kids that legal counsel was mentioned out loud and an apology entered the chat. Now the
answer. And that does make me hopeful, actually, that this swift effect will speak to more women about the true character of Donald Trump and will turn them away. But to your initial point, I know you said we weren't going to talk about it, but I was. It just seems to me that since she is in an interracial marriage, she should have known that to support a racist is problematic. Her children are biracial, and her family is one of the families that in the 70s could not have lived in any of Donald Trump's buildings. So it just seems to me that maybe she's just not that politically savvy, or maybe she's just not read in.
Granted,
but it's
all we know is that she liked a Trump post. We don't know. She hasn't stated that she supported him, but that's fair to interpret that she may have, but we don't know that she's a supporter.
Stakes. This isn't tabloid fluff. It's a stress test of who gets to label whom, who gets to speak for the public, and whether daytime television can still shrug off consequences with a smirk and a commercial break. If the cultural referees can casually suggest kids traveling across the country to hear speakers are linked to extremists, and the fix is a half-hearted sorry only after a legal threat, what does that say about the gatekeepers, the guardrails, and the way truth is produced, packaged, and piped into your living room? Give me 60 seconds and I'll show you why this matters right now, why the internet won't drop it, and why the most uncomfortable part is that both a data guy and a vibe guy, who don't agree on much, landed on the same conclusion about the media bubble Sunny floats in. Click confirmed. Public sentiment on the table.
Sunny Hostin says, "Hold my beer," and is literally claiming Republican women can't think for themselves.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People are tired of being lectured by elites who think diplomas equal wisdom and disagreement equals sin. Contrarian twist. Turns out the pushback wasn't a red versus blue street fight. It was something rarer, numbers colliding with common sense. Fast proof. You don't barter an apology from a national network unless the heat is real. Roadmap. We're going to walk through the Kirk strike, the Rogan roast, the uneducated moment that poured gasoline on everything, and the fallout that turned a segment into a cultural audit.
Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Along the way, I'll show you where expectation and reality parted ways, and why that gap is the only story that actually matters. Start with the second best punch because it's cleaner, colder, and easier to measure. Charlie Kirk came in like a tax auditor for bad takes. No shouting, just a methodical teardown of the idea that one divisive topic should swallow the entire election, and a reminder, backed by data, not vibes, that voters moved for
once the camera's cut.
Make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Reasons bigger than a single litmus test. Context. The setup on that couch has become predictable. Say, voter suppression. Imply a moral caste system, and nod until the applause sign blinks. Application. Kirk ignored the choreography and ran through the scoreboard. Minority voters shifting rightward isn't a myth you can boo off stage. It's a trend line that doesn't care whether a studio panelist approves. He pointed to issues, economy.
Years.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue I think for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry.
I those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to
Crime, border, schools. That real people rank higher than a panel's pet topic, and the audience outside the studio didn't need cue cards to get it. Framing. Expectation said, if we repeat the story loud enough, it becomes the story. Reality said, voters have a grocery bill, a gas bill, a flight cost, and they don't eat hashtags. And the most uncomfortable knife twist? He didn't have to say Sunny's name to expose the posture.
With race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news.
Elite detachment disguised as moral authority. That's the kind of hit you can't clap away because it doesn't target a person, it targets a pattern. Then came the strongest punch, because culture always lands harder than policy in a country that binge-watches meaning. Joe Rogan didn't show up with crosstabs. He showed up with the one solvent studio narratives can't survive, ridicule. Context. Rogan's studio is the opposite of daytime TV, long-form, off-prompter, and allergic to scripted righteousness. In that
fueled worldview.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
He lined up the modern authoritarian tell. When the side that once warned against censorship starts flirting with it, you don't need a party label to know something drifted. Application. He called out the talk show industrial complex for what it too often is, group therapy for pundits who confuse applause with accuracy. He reminded people that institutions hugged Donald Trump on camera when he was good for ratings and turned on him when he threatened their hierarchy, exposing the performative outrage that pretends to be principle. Framing. Expectation said, the panel speaks for the people. Reality said, the panel speaks to the panel.
Joy Behar gets racism. After all, she's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical...
And Rogan, in that offhand way that breaks dams, made it safe for millions to say out loud what they were already thinking. Maybe the daytime sermon isn't Holy Writ. Maybe it's just TV, now fold in the moment that converted quiet eye rolls into open rebellion, painting uneducated voters as the problem, as if a degree is the only credential that counts. Context. On the show, the line landed with the kind of smug confidence only a green room can curate. Uneducated white women. Latino men drifting. Black men not the story this time. The taxonomy of voters as specimens.
Into the pool gets booed for violence.
But unlike this chick, we didn't think it was the best thing that could have happened to us. Although it did get Joy Behar to wear a mask. You make me sick. It's funny, her being named Joy is like me being named ugly.
Outside the studio, that sounded less like analysis and more like contempt. People who fix your car, run your small business, or coach your kids' team heard the subtext. If you don't speak fluent panel, you're lesser. Here's the counterpunch that kept replaying. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and just because you did doesn't mean you're wise. There's knowledge, facts you can memorize, and there's wisdom, judgment you earn by being wrong, paying bills, leading people, and getting back up. Framing. Expectations said a credential is a character reference. Reality said character is a credential. That's why that clip bled out of the studio and into debate clubs, lunchrooms, and living rooms, because the target wasn't a party, it was dignity. Keep the pace up, because every 30 seconds the story adds another layer. The legal angle. After a national platform brushed kids with the extremist-adjacent paint, an apology only materialized when lawyers were mentioned, and the possibility of a courtroom loomed. Context. 5,000 students, many minors, spending their own money to travel during a brutal cost of everything summer, sit through panels and speeches, and go back home with a memory and a media stain. Application. Imagine being 17, applying to college or your first job, and a quick search pulls up a national show hinting you might be linked to the worst label in politics. Even a walkback can't unring that bell. Framing. Expectations said, we can throw shadows at scale and call it commentary. Reality said, your words leave a residue, and when the targets are kids, the bill comes due. Now flip perspectives, because a good story lets the camera roam. Picture the studio, a practiced rhythm of righteousness, that confident glide from anecdote to moral, from applause to ad break. Now cut to the internet. Side-by-side edits, Rogan's monologue intercut with past hugs and smiles for politicians who became monsters only when the polls changed. Memes that hurt because they're accurate. Reaction videos that don't even need to yell, they just roll tape and raise an eyebrow. Expectations said, we set the narrative. Reality said, we used to, until receipts got archived and remix became a verb. Rehook, because we're not done. There's an uncomfortable truth hiding under the pylon. No one needed to call Sunny names to expose the problem. Kirk aimed at ideas and incentives. Rogan aimed at rituals and tone. The audience did the rest. That's why this hit differently. It wasn't misogyny. It wasn't shut up and dribble for daytime TV. It was a mirror held at an angle the studio lights can't flatten. When the show suggested that students at a conservative summit were tainted by association, it wasn't just a cheap smear. It was a confession of how far the arbiters will stretch to keep a story simple. Good team, bad team, educated, uneducated. The apology, secured under the shadow of litigation, arrived like a squeaky shopping cart. Technically functional, aesthetically embarrassing, pattern interrupt, short, sharp, undeniable. You can't cancel a spreadsheet. You can't clap back at a gut laugh. You can only look smaller when you try. That's the asymmetry that made this week feel different. Two men who rarely share a lane ended up describing the same map. One